Members of the Senate, honourable men of Rome, thank you for yielding me the floor. I know that some of you do not trust men of my blood to speak here, but check the writing on the walls next time you walk through the forum. There are no lies there. It was my father who saved this city, while his brothers and his sons now toil to save this empire. But I know that's not what you want to hear. Surely you are bored already of singing the praises of my uncle Julianus for defeating the Huns? You must have read the scrolls going around, whole books even listing all that he has done. No, you are quite bored of that. I think you'd rather listen to me talk about your own achievements, as a house, as men of government. Well, we're not all dead, and that's more than some predicted. The credit for that one's a little up for grabs, but you have a great many hands here, so grab it you should. Someone will come off looking like a hero. Except, of course, the problem isn't solved, is it? You bicker while your people die, don't you? Another topic I'm sure you're tired of hearing about. Don't worry, I'll stop, really. I'm actually going to give you a tip towards a solution. The famine, the debt, the instability all comes from the east. Egypt does not pay its taxes, nor most of Greece. Ah, now you see what I mean. Yes, I offer you an inside track to my brothers, Septimus and Anicius, the men whose work serves their friends, not their empire. I can help you bring them to heel, if you can help me reach them. Hello and welcome back to Fields of Mars. In the previous episode we saw Septimus cutting down some more Easterners in another fort battle on his continued advance through Anatolia. We saw Julianus recolonizing part of the Huns' strange ruined territory with an allied state to help against them. Septimus had more action when he pushed on to take Sinope after not being able to go for his actual target of Antioch. Meanwhile in Africa, Anicius was taking down some Sassanids, capturing Berenice in an easy settlement assault. And then finally we had a settlement defense when Sinope was immediately attacked by multiple armies from Aria, which were defeated. It seems Eutropius' little trip to Rome has been productive. He's managed to get himself a wife, and a Caesar, no less, a fertile Caesar, probably the perfect thing to get if you're looking for some sort of political marriage, which I'm sure he was. So that is all very good. We're going to go through the routine of getting the Laquis to stop laying siege to Alexandria, which we now have to do every single turn until we either get some money or Anicius gets back to try and defeat them. Very annoying right now. The other thing I wanted to do this turn is try and do some damage to the Huns. I've got this army under Promotus, a Senate officer, but it's just a reserve army, mainly for garrisoning and fighting rebels. I didn't want to deploy it against the nearby Hun army, so we're going to leave that for now, although we will come back to that. And meanwhile, we can have Aurelianus take out a weaker nearby Hun army. It tries to escape, it doesn't want to fight, but we do. You can just about catch up. So there we go, that's another Hun army destroyed. And because the Huns don't have any buildings, because of the way they've glitchily colonized territory, they actually can't rebuild their troops at all. So it's quite the opposite of the infinitely respawning Huns from earlier in the campaign. So every time we're taking down one of those stacks, it should be permanent. So we're getting closer and closer to dealing with the Hun menace. Meanwhile, Septimus still looking to take Ankara, and I noticed here that the enemy were taking attrition. I'm checking the province effects. I wanted to see if this attrition was being caused by a drought or something, but it didn't seem to be anything local, and that basically means the Sassanids probably have a global food shortage, meaning all their armies across their empire will be taking attrition right now. Good news, although not of any direct use. We need to send Anicius back to try and deal with those Lachmids, of course. The problem here is that Berenice, which we spent all that time capturing, is going to be super vulnerable because the Sassanids have a couple of fleets nearby, the Lachmids have a fleet nearby as well, and they could easily just go and retake it if they want. So really we just don't have the resources to defend all our territory down there in Africa. Now, we've got a little bit of action for Uther, because he can go and steal this Alaman walled city of Lugdunum. I was looking at it last time and there was a full stack there, but that full stack wandered off and left only one unit in the garrison. It's because this town is an eastern style town, because I think the Abgatians used to control it, some random faction that was over here for some reason. And as a result, Germanic factions get basically no garrison, and we can just move straight on in, easy peasy, and that's actually part of the same province with Turinum in it, so that should make it a little bit easier to control. Very nice indeed, and we've moved the front line to a nice defensible position. Now, the Huns that I didn't want to attack with my reserve forces do attack us. You can see I've actually split the reserve into two different armies. That's because this is the Senate forces preparing themselves to receive Eutropius and give him an army to send to the east, hopefully to gain some leverage over our other eastern commanders. But right now, these forces are going to have to test themselves in battle, because the Huns are coming in. We're going to fight this field battle and use the fact that we're near a settlement to get extra units as a garrison. So I need to combine all these three armies together into one block, and the enemy are going to have a chance to exploit the fact that we started to split up by basically attacking us right away, which they do with a small component of their army rushing towards the part of my formation that hasn't got into position yet with some of their heavy cavalry. A pretty nice move from the enemy. I had to rush my men to try and get into some sort of position before the enemy arrived, and we are just about going to make it by a split second. Those civilians waiting to the very last second to get out of those fields as well. They must have a lot of dedication to their farms. So there's horsemen come crashing into at least the front of our units, and further down the line is a similar deal. They're crashing into a stationary studio, so that's all well and good. But on the left side of the line, the enemy are attacking with their 2 units of large onagers, and as we've seen before, that's going to be a problem for our static Roman formations. At least we're in a long, thin line, means that shots that land too near or too far are unlikely to do much damage, but the ones that get direct hits are just blasting us apart, and a decent amount of them get direct hits. Already we've lost half of that unit. Very, very deadly, those large onagers. Down the line, the cavalry attacks kind of been stopped now. We've got the enemy bogged down, and a lot of our men are spearmen, so against cavalry attacks we're kind of safe. We can get a lot of kills and at least push the enemy back. They're going to lose a decent amount of their cavalry detachment there. So soon it will just be an infantry battle, and the good news is I got some cavalry around to the back of the map to take out those large onagers. Although they've already taken out 75% of all of my units, at least they're not going to do much more damage, as my men now stationary to studio up in preparation for the enemy's foot and horse archer bombardments. It's quite curious, actually. They seem to have adopted some bastardized form of the Lord's wisdom. They attend church, that's a start, but they seem to attribute various unknown deeds to the influence of the Lord. I can't say for sure, but I have reason to suspect that they are simply rebranding their heathen gods as some kind of avatar for God's power. Interesting, yet quite disrespectful. I won't pass too much blame onto these poor people, for what choice did they have but to believe these old storytellers dressed up as priests? We will set them right. We will. However, there is cause for investigation of their claims, I think. We cannot assume the Lord did not have any part in their history after all. Perhaps their gods really were of his creation. The infantry fighting is now going to get started, and although the Hun infantry doesn't look very good, we've seen before that actually it's extremely good. They're all classed as tier 3 units just by looking like tier 1 ones. And our men are just getting absolutely annihilated by them. Even this spear unit just cutting through our cohort auxilia. Not nice, already lost half the unit. We're going to lose our front line pretty much straight away to this infantry assault, where it's actually hitting our front line because they're not hitting the whole thing. Luckily I had reserves already prepared, so I'm now putting a second line immediately behind the first to plug the gaps that are about to appear, and they arrive just in time. Those cohort auxilia are defeated at about this point, and now the enemy will start hacking through towards our Western Auxilia Palatina, who are even worse, of course, in melee, so that's not exactly going to stop them. And indeed, the enemy seemed to just move right through them. They didn't provide any stopping power whatsoever. Immediately, they're being rear-attacked by the unit that attacked them from the front. Don't know how they managed to achieve that, but it's not good, and our men are going to disappear pretty much straight away. That means the enemy are going to be breaking through our centre, attacking the archers. Not nice at all. So basically this Hun infantry is very good, and the only real way we have to deal with it is to lose a lot of men in the process trying to cut them down, perhaps using our archers to thin them out if we can. But getting our own men out of the way to allow the archers to shoot is going to be a problem because most of them are already engaged. Though while all that infantry fighting was going on, we do basically win the battle behind the enemy's army, where we take out all their horse archers and archers, allowing us to totally surround the enemy, and we killed their general there. As we saw, the killing of the general doesn't have an immediate effect because Hun armies tend to all have very high morale, so the enemy will fight on, but for a little bit less time hopefully, and this should allow us to gradually grind their units down. And that's kind of what happens. We use archers and just throwing tons of inferior troops at the enemy, and it eventually causes them to break after they've taken some more casualties, and as they break they are going to be wiped out. So that is all well and good. Finally, units there on the left just waiting to go. Even with no strength on the balance bar, they're going to fight on with like 3 men. Eventually they decide to leave, and 1 full unit leaving there. So we win the battle with extreme casualties pretty much. Our front line completely decimated, inferior troops with inferior leadership. However, we have defeated a pretty powerful army, so in terms of an exchange, it's probably actually turning out to be a pretty good battle from that perspective. You can see on our side we actually didn't lose any full units, so that's all good. It's just all our units are completely wrecked, so we can get them back to full strength since we don't have to fight for a while. And the Hun army really damaged, a few units going to escape, but the vast majority of it destroyed, including all of the most powerful elements like the large onagers and the devil archers. So they basically won't be much of a problem anymore. We can probably finish them off next turn. We see some Huns killing some Illyrians there nearby. We'll have to hunt that army down. And now Julianus manages to spring an ambush on some Huns that were basically just passing by his position. I'd left him in an ambush position there on the road, basically just in case some Huns came over. And funnily enough, some did. I didn't actually expect it to work. It was very much just a precaution because they had nothing else to do with Julianus right now. And the ambush itself isn't really going to be an ambush because our deployment zone was too far from the enemy, so we couldn't like immediately rush in to get all the horse archers into melee or anything like that. So basically it's just going to turn into a normal fight where we just start a bit closer to the enemy than usual. I did try releasing my war dogs as the fight started, basically to experiment with how they would do in just fighting the horse archers straight on, and the answer is not particularly well. The horse archers can simultaneously kill the dogs in melee and they're still shooting arrows at our line, so really it didn't work as well as I thought it would. You need to attack them from behind while they're distracted or while they're fighting something else already, preferably for that to be really effective. So anyway, the rest of the fight is just going to be a basic killing the Huns maneuver. It's an all-cavalry Hun army, and most of that cavalry is horse archers and cataphracts, so we just need to sit in stationary test judo so we get a bonus against both of those elements, and really do nothing. There's not much in the way of tactics that we can do. Our unit's just going to absorb all the enemy's fire. This one in the middle, not in stationary test judo apparently, although I think that's probably just a glitch in the replay because it's getting shot, and we've seen before that when you get shot by devil archers, your men just die instantly in huge numbers. So they probably actually are in stationary test judo since they're not getting killed so quickly. The enemy's general comes up to engage this unit that's not in stationary test judo actually, and that's going to be pretty good for us because our general's already damaged from arrow fire. He's taking friendly fire, and he's taking fire from these guys who are slightly uphill, firing at a strange angle that's just about working out, just about managing to drop arrows onto the enemy without completely wrecking our own side there. So we annihilate the enemy's general pretty fast actually. That went surprisingly well. So the rest of the battle really is going to be nothing. We just wait for all the enemy to run out of ammunition, and as they do, they're going to charge our front line, and the horse archers can't do anything against the stationary test studio. They'll eventually lose the melees and then run away. So one unit at a time, we're going to defeat the Hun army by just waiting for them to defeat themselves, basically. So after a while, a couple of units remained. They tried to escape, and I just chased them down with some cavalry to finish it off a little bit faster. That's a decisive victory. Nice and easy. Julianus making it look really easy, taking down these armies that usually give us so much trouble. We actually did that with barely any losses whatsoever. I think the fact it was an ambush lowered the enemy's morale, which made it significantly easier than usual to get rid of these units who usually just fight to the last man. Now their general somehow survived despite his entire unit basically being wiped out, and one unit of horse archers is going to escape with him, one unit that decided not to engage, I guess, right at the end. But of course, they're not going to cause much trouble from now on, just like that other Hun army. We can probably find them and kill them later on, since they can't recruit anything new. Although they can still raid and block replenishment, the Hun's special abilities, so we do want to take them down if and when we can. Were you to travel to the frontier and ask the locals where it was that Julianus ambushed the Huns, you would be quite surprised. They would point to the open plains to their south, bare of growth but for an occasional copse, and sufficiently flat that the standards of an approaching army might be seen a day's march away. So how did he do it, you would ask? Taking these masters of the steppe by surprise on their own ground, and hitting them from within an arrow's flight while they were still merrily marching to some new atrocity? They will not be able to tell you. Only I know my own genius, after all. And future commanders would do well to study my works in detail, as to glean for themselves even a morsel of such quality would be a true blessing. The Lachmans decide to change their strategy. Instead of just constantly besieging Alexandria, now they're going to head south to attack Oxyrhynchus, this town that's given us so much trouble in the past. They've just brought a gigantic army of generic spearmen, basically, but that is going to be enough to overcome our small garrison. I'm not going to bother contesting it. They can do what they want with the town, and they actually ended up just sacking it, so that's better than occupying it at least. However, they also sent a fleet to attack Berenice, and I thought that if our garrison was at full strength, we probably would have a chance to take them down, but because our garrison's basically dead since we only just took it, that's probably not going to be an option, and we might as well once again just say, okay, we'll not contest this one. And they do indeed attack, and they're going to sack it again. So it's nice that they're not taking these things. We're going to keep them, and they will gradually repair themselves if we just leave them there. So that's something, but of course it does expose how completely weak we are to such attacks. We just don't have the forces to defend all of our territory in this area. Aurelianus finally got himself a wife. He's actually been unmarried for most of the campaign. Finally at 60 manages to bag one, so congratulations to him. Now I noticed the Garamantians were also coming over towards Egypt, so I'm now going to move Anicius to Alexandria. I wanted Anicius to go and take down that Lakhmid army, of course, but he can't reach it right now, so we'll just act as a deterrent against the Garamantians and let the Lakhmids basically do whatever they want. They can't really attack Alexandria, but they can attack our other stuff again, so we don't have a solution to that problem right now, basically. Eutropius is going to start his first moves. He's finally got his army together, basically taking all of the reserves that were hanging around Dardania, and his first move will be to take out the Huns who were hanging around, only a few of them, so a nice easy victory for him to get things started. Now he's going to be coming over here to help Septimus, but before he arrives, Septimus has got some plans of his own. I noticed that Caesarea Eusebia is currently undefended by the Sassanids, except of course by its full stack garrison. However, this random force from Atropatene, this dead fortified army, is going to provide us a nice opportunity. I come over to attack it. It's going to be a fort assault battle where we basically don't care about the fort or the army inside, because here we have the entire garrison of the city coming outside of the city to take part in the fight. So if we could basically just jump them as soon as they come into the battle and take them out, that means we can just go and take the city really easily afterwards without taking big damage, having to do an actual city assault against defended walls. So the fight gets going, and we can see the garrison army coming into the field just now. It's going to be walking right through where I deployed, so that's perfect because it's trying to get to the fort to support their allies. The troops in the fort actually came out and are going to attack us, so we are going to be attacked on two sides here. So I'm going to form up with lines of troops facing forwards and back. They started their attack with some Lakhmid scouts who seemed completely oblivious to the fact they were being attacked by arrows and javelins, and kept us trotting into our lines, really dedicated to scouting and seeing what we had, but I don't think many of them will make it back with that information. They tried at the very least. So of course most of this army is just spearmen. They've got some Armenian spears which are okay, and a ton of pagan band which are your standard trash, so Basically, we're not going to have any trouble taking these units down, and because they don't have that many archers, we can avoid using testudos and thus bombard them with javelins as they come in to inflict plenty of damage. They're also going to be attacking not in tandem with their allies who are currently just forming up. They spent a very long time in this battle forming up outside the fort, so this little fight is going to basically happen completely separately to the engagement with the actual Atropatene forces who they're supposed to be saving here. Their leading unit gets destroyed by javelin fire, not even reaching our lines, and as the rest of the fight gets started, I'm pretty confident our men will do well in these engagements against all these spear troops, so that's all well and good. They can just grind against our front line, and we of course have freedom to send cavalry and such behind them. Going to take out the small number of archers they did bring, with Septimus taking his Praetorian cavalry into the fight there. And we also killed the Atropatene officer who did eventually come near our lines. I basically just sent some javelin units out to go and just kill everything because there wasn't that much out there, so that was pretty effective. Their archers are going to have to duel with our archers while the rest of our army just surrounds and annihilates all of the Sassanid garrison, and it works pretty well. So once everything's shattered, we're going to want to do as much damage as possible and try and take out as many full units as possible, because everything we kill here is something we don't have to kill in the battle that will immediately follow this one as we go on to attack the city. Eventually I decide I've done enough. It's a decisive victory for our forces, but really we're looking to see what the result of the next battle is going to be. We did get basically everything from the garrison. Some of the Atropatene force survived there, but we don't really care about that at all. They can just stand there for all we care. We're going to go in and attack Caesarea Eusebia. There are 3 basically dead units inside, so we'll just auto-resolve them out of existence, and now we can march triumphantly into the city, taking it with much more ease than I would have imagined. So we didn't get our actual target of Ankara, but our real objective in Ankara was just to have a walled city that we could defend and move the point where we're breaking the Sassanids away from our own territory to get some breathing room. So hopefully Caesarea Eusebia could do the same thing. It's in its own province, meaning they're going to rebel constantly, and they don't have any food, so that's probably going to make it a bit harder. General Gurgis, we urge you again to reconsider your insolence. You cannot hide your conquests from Rome, nor can you hide what you owe. You may think you have inherited your father's talent for avoiding punishment, but that talent was built on service to the Senate, willing or not. You provide little salve to ease the broken laws that haunt you. Therefore it is time to change the methods by which you operate. No longer will you be a king within the empire. You will answer to the Senate and the duly appointed consuls, Generals Julianus and Arintheus. These men, of your own blood, understand the meaning of duty. Until you can be more like them, your achievements are wasted and shall be erased from history. The Garamantians switched their focus, their army jumping down to the road towards Otsirincus, so it looks like they might be coming down to attack it, but it's already under attack by the Lachmids, coming in once again with their Stacco spears. The balance bar for some reason looking a little bit better than it did, I think, anyway, the last time they attacked, even though we have fewer troops. But anyway, we will just once again admit defeat there and let them have their way with the settlement, and they're going to do exactly the same thing, just sacking it, although since they already sacked it, they're probably not really gaining anything by doing so, but it is their choice, and they are going to do exactly the same thing again at Berenice, attacking with the fleet, easily defeating our garrison and sacking it, probably to no particular gain. So now in the next turn we've got this problem basically. The Garamantian army and the Lachmid army are just standing down there, and there's nothing at all to stop them from just continuing the current trend of constantly attacking and destroying our garrisons and making sure our settlements are wrecked. And the wreckedness of those settlements is going to slowly ruin Alexandria as well through disease and public order problems and food problems, etc. So it would be nice if we could solve them. Anicius can move the main force to Oxyrhynchus, so they can't attack it again, but it doesn't do much about the other regions and the other potential threats, so we'll just have to see what happens. Got a food shortage up here in Cappadocia. They're not happy about it, and there's not too much we can do because we're actually under siege right now. Arria sent a force down to besiege Septimus inside the city. Now I guess this is what I expected / wanted, because we were only taking a walled settlement so that the enemy would have to struggle to attack us, so the fact they couldn't attack us right away proves we've bought ourselves some level of safety there. And I'm actually going to leave that siege going because they're taking attrition out there in the snow, so it'll actually be easier to sally next turn if we do want to sally, so I'll just leave them to it. And meanwhile start moving over reinforcements at last to this front in the form of Eutropius. He's going to rush down despite the fact he'll actually lose men here due to attrition, but he's basically eager to get to the front line, so he'll just rush to Constantinopolis where he can refit his forces and then move on. Meanwhile, Aurelianus also rushing through the snow and losing troops, this time because there was a chance to attack a Hun army while it was in range of one of my garrisons, and that gives us a super easy auto-resolve, so we can just cut down that army. It was also already damaged from taking winter attrition itself. So that's very nice, another full stack of the Huns removed from the picture. Julianus will have to cover up the fact that Aurelianus is doing a decent amount of the work on this Hun conquering project, but I'm sure he can manage it. Now, in the end turn sequence, the Huns actually offer me a peace treaty. Not the first time they've done so. This time I considered it a bit more seriously than before, because now they're in less of a position to actually damage us and harm us. It would be nice to get peace, because that would free up a couple of stacks basically to go and do something else, which would be revolutionary. But I'm actually not going to take this peace, once again, just because I don't trust the Huns at all to not just attack me the second I move my forces away. So I really want to get them to the point when they either can't do any damage to us or are destroyed entirely. So now we're in the next turn, Eutropius starting to move into Anatolia. I can't go to rescue Septimus right now because of Ankara, so basically the fact that Septimus is so deep in enemy territory means I'm going to have to take a roundabout route to try and get to him. So it's going to be a couple of turns before Eutropius can arrive, basically, and I'm just going to leave that siege going to see if it remains the whole time, because if it does, then we'll arrive and be able to break it pretty easily. Julianus is now going to hunt down some Huns. I spotted some Huns in a valley down there to his southwest, and we also now know the Huns have a settlement to our northeast up there, so we'll probably have to go over and take that out at some point. Might as well kill their armies nearby first. Unfortunately, because they're in this really deep forested position, I can't really reach them, but I can move to a position where it will force them to go out the other end of the valley, which will basically take them away from my own territory, hopefully anyway, so that may turn out to be a productive move, and Julianus will just have to chase those Huns for a while, basically, to try and find them. Now, Anicius needs to start moving back north once again. He's really just marching all over the place, and it's again because the Garamantians have changed their target. They're coming towards Alexandria, but we actually had enough movement points to go and attack them right now. But since our force is quite superior to theirs, they can just fall back, and we were right on the edge of our movement range there, so we can't chase them at all. We'll just have to wait, and they can of course go around us now, or just go back to Oxyrhynchus, so this is going to be pretty annoying. A repeating pattern seems to be building up in that region. Now, one final concern for this week, I noticed there was an Alaman full stack that had appeared near Lugdunum, but it was actually in reinforcement range of Gaul, this separatist Roman faction, which we're a defensive ally with, but they're not at war with the Alamans. So basically I'm trying to get them into the war, because if they are part of the war, we can just attack the Alaman stack, and all of those Gaulish troops will come in to aid us and make it a pretty easy victory for Uther, potentially. Unfortunately, as we can see, they basically turned down the deal. It's probably a bad idea to be at war with the Alamans since they are so big, so that's got to be their motivation. Even all that money I was offering them wasn't tempting them at all. So I decided to put Uther on a nearby river crossing, hoping that if they did want to attack Lugdunum, they'd have to go through us and we could repeat our success of the previous river defense against the Alamans. However, there was another river crossing apparently nearby that I had completely missed, and they just went right around us and attacked Lugdunum anyway. What an enormous blunder. We have no chance whatsoever against their force, just a few dead garrison units on our side, so I'm going to just auto-resolve that, and they will of course win. We're lucky though in that they do not recapture the settlement, so we don't need to try and take it back for ourselves, which would have been extremely difficult to take that walled settlement with a full army inside it if they had taken it. So that is a turn of luck. Perhaps Uther will still get a chance to redeem himself out of this. Slowly, the great Hun armies that had destroyed so much of Europe and terrorized the rest were dying off. Without a leader providing unified direction, their people seemed unwilling to follow their predecessors on the warpath. The forces they still had were left running from increasingly powerful and confident Roman armies, patrolling the ruins of their borders as if they were the very core of Rome itself. It was one threat the Empire could finally consider itself saved from. But its main rivals from before the Hunnic invasion remained, and they showed no signs of wanting to cease their attacks even in the face of seemingly unsustainable losses. If Mars was truly the patron of the Empire, then, true to his purpose, he did not allow the wars to end. That is all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks to the OfficiallyDevin patrons for making this video happen. We'll see how the Sassanids cope when we finally start to bring our full war machine to bear on them as our empire pulls itself together in the next episode of Fields of Mars.